Everyone. This is Randy Weir, author R. Weir, coming you from Colorado for today's podcast, Bringing Life to Characters. We have another Colorado author today. She lives down in Colorado Springs, which I'll introduce here in a minute. But I first wanted to throw out a couple of plugs for myself. I've got my new audiobook, Fallen Star, narrated by Philip Polite. Philip did a great job narrating it. It was a tough job, a lot of characters in that book, and he has a good voice range of characters that he does in there. But hopefully, if you like audiobooks, you'll check that out. And that's book 2, but he also narrated book 1, The Divine Devils, both part of the Divine Devils series. I'm hoping to make the other 2 books in the series also as audiobooks, but we need as many downloads as possible for that to happen. And both were Silver Falchion Award winners for Best Thriller, so they're good books to listen to, good books to read if you like to read as well. So hopefully you'll check those out. And then one more plug about my latest actual book in the Jarvis Band series, Murder by 100 Cuts, dealing with the trial of the Front Range Butcher, one of my other award-winning books. But that's another fun book, and got to get into the trial stuff and learning. Got to talk to a judge in Adams County, Marcus Ivy, who was a friend of mine. He actually was my lawyer at one time when I was dealing with my motorcycle accident. So he was very, very nice and gave me a lot of insight into some of the law and the way things work, and tried to be as realistic as possible. I laugh sometimes when I watch some of these lawyer shows and how repetitive they are with all the objections and stuff, and the way they walk around and talk. And he's like, nope, we don't allow them to do that. They got to stand at a podium when they're questioning people and stuff. They can't go up to the jury box and stare in their eyes and stuff and try to intimidate them while they're doing that. That's only when they do like their closing arguments and stuff. So, but anyway, tried to be realistic in that. So, but enough about me. I want to introduce my guest. This is Jodi Bowersox, and Jodi's going to join us today. Hi, Jodi. How's it going?
Hello. Good.
So hopefully I pronounced your last. I was going to check Bowersox, right?
Yep. You
Just
got it
the way
right.
it's spelled, right?
Yes. Yeah. It'd be amazing how many pronunciations we get, of that. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty easy. It's just like it looks.
Well, and mine's always a challenge. Some people it's Weir, Wire.
Right.
I've had, and of course people also always worked. When I was a kid, they always called me weirdo and werewolf and all those things and stuff. So I had to develop a thick skin. These days, I just laugh and go, yeah, weirdo, that works.
Right.
fix my personality. So, but I forgot to mention it's hot here again. The last video I did was a couple of weeks ago. We were in the middle of that 100-degree heat wave that we had here in Colorado, where we had, I think, three or four straight. Well, it was like right at the beginning of it, and we're kind of back into it. It's supposed to get close to 100 again, I think, tomorrow.
Oh,
no. Well, is it pretty hot down there in Colorado Springs?
It's not too bad today. I mean, we did shut the windows finally and turn on the air, but it was really cool for the last few days and kind of up until this morning. So
a little higher altitude down there than here in Denver. Yeah. You're a little more than 6,000 feet.
Right. But it's definitely been a hotter summer than usual here.
Have you been getting any of those torrential rainstorms like we've been getting?
We got 3 good rains, and the rest were all just sprinkling nothings. But we got 3 good ones that, meant I didn't have to water my garden for a few days. So
yeah, I've not had to water quite as much this year. We had a pretty wet spring, and then we've had a few. But it always seems like we get these downpours, and of course all the water just runs off because the ground's hard. And doesn't really soak in. So, well, enough about the weather. Welcome on the show. Tell us about yourself. I mentioned you're in Colorado Springs, family, friends, whatever you want to talk about yourself.
Okay. Well, we've actually been in Colorado since the end of 2012. My husband grew up in the Plains in Yuma, Colorado, and I grew up in Nebraska. We met in the middle of Kansas, and we spent 27 years in the Kansas City area before we moved out here. So I haven't been here super long, but I feel like it's kind of like home now. And I've really, really appreciated all of the writers' world out here. Colorado is just incredibly full of authors and writers. It's amazing to me how many writers groups are here in Colorado, and that not in other states of the Midwest. So yeah, I was actually kind of really, I had just started writing novels kind of the last year we were in Kansas. So it was really fortuitous to then move out here to where there was groups that you could involve with and help you. And so, yeah, that's been amazing. Um, yeah, I have a husband, Kevin. He's also a writer. He writes humorous sci-fi. I have two boys that are both married and live here in Colorado Springs. And yeah, what else do you want to know?
Cats? Didn't you have cats?
Oh yes, of course we have cats. We've always had cats from the very beginning. We're down to three though. That's
Down to three. What's the max you've had?
Yeah. Several years ago we had five. In 2020 we had five. But we got these two kittens, and we knew we had some older ones. So it's like, okay, it's gonna be all right. These guys are just gonna. It's like when you plant that tree under the big tree because you know the big tree's not going to last.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we got these kittens, and yeah, and I lost one of my precious ones this year. But yeah, so we're down to three, and they're fun. We love cats, and yeah, as far as writing goes, I've been a writer, I think, pretty much all my life in one capacity or another, even if I didn't know it, didn't realize it, didn't call myself a writer. But like I just started out in my 4-H clubs. I was the news reporter, and they kept reelecting me because I liked to do it and nobody else did. And and I actually got purple ribbons at the fair on my news reports and stuff. So that was fun. I think I did it for 3 different 4-H clubs. And then, of course, I moved into the bad poetry phase of life, which, I got rid of all of those. I found some recently. I was like, oh, no, these have got to go. I don't want anybody finding these after I'm gone. So anyway, bad poetry went into writing for the stage. And I wrote a play when I was in college. I was a theater major. And so I wrote my senior project play. And then I was in a church that was all too happy to let me write for them. And I wrote skits, and I wrote children's productions, and, stuff for the women's events. And so I did that for over the course of about 20 years. And of course, in the middle of that, I had kids. And you can't have kids without making up a few stories. So I had some kids' stories that I had written. I wrote A Tale of Two Kitties. And then I wrote The Stubborn Princess, which I'm not sure where that came from because I have 2 boys and I don't have any princesses in my life. But that one just kind of rolled out one night, a fun rhyming story about a princess with long hair to her feet, curly hair, and she didn't want to take care of it anymore. And the problems that happen after that. So then I had these 2 kids' books that I was trying to figure out how to get published. Originally I did my kitty book like on a CD that I sold to people. I had done the illustrations for that, and I sold the CD to people. And then once hybrid publishing came out, I was able to get those 2 done through that. And then Amazon's Create Space happened, and the whole world opened up for a lot of us. I while I was I homeschooled my kids for 10 years, and in the middle of that, my mom, she told me that I should try writing a novel. She was a big romance reader, and she read every book her little library had, and she'd get more in, and she said, Jodi, you could write better stuff than this. And so I was like, well, I kind
Your
of
first critic.
Yeah.
First critic, right?
Now, so maybe someday I'll get to it. I'll try it. I had a little spark of an idea, just a tiny little spark. And after I was done with homeschooling the kids, and I just sat down and started typing, and it was an obsession from day one. Just was so much fun. And I didn't start it till after Mom was gone. But I like to think she's looking down and seeing what I've done with it all, with her suggestion. I'm about to publish my 19th novel now. So she was definitely a good push in that direction. And so, yeah, I started off with a book. It was very much me. It had a whole bunch of inside jokes and stuff that nobody would get. It would just seem like a story unless you knew me and know the background behind some of the stuff. But I had worked as an interior designer, and so my first book was Interiors by Design, and it's about an interior designer that classes up this lonely guy's life right along with his apartment. So that's where it all began. And from there, the first two books are very much kind of pulled out of my own life and experience. The next one is my small town Nebraska romance. That's where I grew up. Has everything in it I've ever known or learned about horses, and with a hunky, horse veterinarian. So,
of course, they always got to be hunky, right?
Yeah, they all got to be great looking.
Yeah.
So then the third book, I really branched out on that one, and that's my first suspense mystery, and that took a lot more brain power, I guess. It didn't just roll out as fast because I wasn't just pulling stuff out of me and my life. I was suddenly making, and I'm sure that almost every woman character I have has a little bit of something of me in it. But this was a very different, very, very different character. And so that's where I guess I started really kind of expanding out of my little world into bigger worlds and doing research and yeah, you know how hard it is to make a good mystery. You have to open a whole bunch of doors, and then you got to close every one of them at some point and get till you get down to that one person. But you can't give that away too soon. So I think writing mystery is one of the most difficult genres to write in. Time travel is also a brain twister, which I have a time travel series also.
So you time travel as well. So,
Yes.
so you've touched on a lot of different genres. It sounds like
It's not something they tell you to do.
Right.
You're not.
And are they all under the same name, or do you have different names?
I only have a different name for my children's books.
Yeah.
Most of my books are kind of under the big umbrella of clean romance, but under that I have a contemporary faith fiction series, the time travel series, humorous sci-fi, suspense, and you won't believe this, but I've got a bee in my bonnet to write a medieval romance. And so I started that this summer just for fun, because it's just, time travel really does twist your brain in knots. So it's like, let's just do a fun adventure story. And so that's what I've been working on this summer.
Yeah, sounds like you're writing a lot of different stuff. I've pretty much been in the mystery thriller genre area. I'm actually writing a short story for the the Deadwood Reads event that we do every year.
Right.
Anthology. And I'm putting my private eye, and he's going to experience what he thinks is a little bit of a time travel thing. To put him back in time to Deadwood, because all the anthologies need to be about Deadwood.
Oh, okay.
South Dakota. So that would be my first experience in doing anything like that. I don't know that I would want to write a lot of time travel stuff, because I know there's a lot of rules, but I know you break a lot of rules in time travel too,
Right.
And all that. And
kind of create your own rules.
Yeah.
As long as you don't break your own rules,
right.
You're good. Because every time travel has to have a method of traveling,
Right.
whether it's the stones in Scotland or, some sort of magical ornament or something. or just running into a portal somewhere. Everybody has to have a reason. I even read a book where they just looked at the moon and traveled. And I'm like, what? Everybody would be jumping all over the place, right? So, anyway, my method is lightning. And that was the idea came from a real trip up Pikes Peak in a lightning storm on the cog rail. And they wouldn't let us off at the top because the lightning was too bad. And of course, they tell you to drink water all the way up so you don't have altitude sickness. So we're sitting there having to go to the bathroom so badly, and they won't let us off the top. And we were freezing because we did not have adequate clothes on either. It was, in the 90s at the bottom and in the, 40s or whatever at the top. And so anyway, that scene is that's in there. But just the idea of, I had just been to the Living History Ranch that's nearby, a Garden of the Gods, Rockledge Ranch. So it's like those two things together just started me thinking, and just came up with this idea of the light getting struck by lightning on Pikes Peak, and she sent back to 1892 Manitou Springs because that's what she had been thinking about when she was at that ranch, and so. Anyway, it's just it's a fun series, but it has a lot of suspense. And as it goes on, you find out there's a time war happening, and there's time agents that nobody ever even knew were out there and about. And so, that was just a very fun series. And it's actually my most popular series. Someone is reading that every day. So after I wrote 2 more series after that one, I went back to it and jumped out of the center of it with my new Time Agent series. I had just made a mention in book 2 of the Lightning Riders at the end that these characters, Ashley and Corey, spent 10 years as time agents. So that's where I'm at. I'm filling in those 10 years with these characters and what they were doing in that time. So
there it is with you as well.
Yeah. So it's really fun, but like I said, it's brain taxing. So every now and then I need to shift out of it and let my brain rest. I mean, I have to have calendars that are color coded, and if you do a lot of jumping back and forth, and so
can be very complicated, I'm sure. Of course, murder mysteries have their own complications as well. So and all that. So. Well, you've got a lot of different books. So who are some authors that have inspired you to write all these different genres through the years? There's authors that you've enjoyed that helped give you these ideas.
I think that my eclectic writing came directly from my eclectic reading, because I love to read a lot of different types of books. Also, I love sci-fi, if it's not so bogged down in the sci-fi stuff that you want to snooze. I love fantasy, almost anything, as long as it's a good book with a good story and good characters. I don't like horror. I don't read horror, but just about anything other than that, I could give it a shot, So I think one of my favorite sci-fi writers is Lois McMaster Bujold, and she also writes fantasy, but she's just excellent. I've gotten into this medieval romance thing because I was on a reading jag of Tamara Lee and Tanya Bird, and Tamara Lee writes historical that has to fit into English history perfectly. Tanya Bird has created her own medieval world. And that's kind of what I'm going to do, because I don't want to have to mess around with the history of England. I just don't want to. And so you can just do so much more if you don't have to be tied into that. You can do whatever you want. Tanya Bird writes incredibly emotionally intense stories. So intense that I can't read her before I go to bed. I have to set time aside in the afternoon if I want to read one of her books. Tamara Lee's not quite so intense, so I can read her anytime. But so those are good historical ones that I love. And I just love good humorous stuff too. Barry J. Hutchison, who has the Space Team books, are very fun. I love a good laugh out loud book. My Mars series is a humorous sci-fi series, and it's Mars Madness, Beware the Eyes of Mars, and the Mars Air. And the ideas for this series really just came from the titles. I had given those titles to a character in my contemporary romance series. And later I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if I wrote her books? So all I had to go on was the title, Mars Madness, and Beware the Eyes of Mars. And then I added the third one in later. So it's like, well, what can I do with Mars Madness? I can do all kinds of things with that. So what I ended up doing was making a world where it's so far in the future that there was a resort on Mars. But of course, only the very, 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 very rich get to go there. So every now and then they have the Mars Madness lottery. So average Joes and Janes can have a shot at a Mars vacation. So that was the beginning of the idea. And from there, it just, it opened up a lot of mad, crazy doors and then start closing them as you go through the story. So it's just very fun. It's got a lovesick android. It's got, it's almost got a little bit of a Parent Trap kind of plot. And you've got the divorced parents, and each of them has, somebody else that they're seeing, and the daughter doesn't want that. And so anyway,
it all takes place on Mars then,
it's a lot of the story is on that first one is on the transport to Mars, because that takes a really long time to get to Mars. So the transport itself is like a cruise ship. It's got all the amenities of a cruise ship, because you got to keep people entertained for several months on this journey. So it's just really fun. Let me just read you the back of it. It would only take a dream and $20 trillion to create a resort on Mars. But at $1 billion a ticket, it was a luxury that only the 0.01% could afford, until the Mars Madness lottery. For the price of a $50 lottery ticket, even burger-flipping Joes and Janes could have a shot at a Mars adventure. Even hyper-organizational, germophobic, scaredy-cat, fussy-pants Katrina McKenna, who only bought a ticket at her daughter Frankie's insistence. With the addition of one ex-husband, 2 new flames, a lovesick robotic maid, a 10-year-old cybersecurity whiz, a reclusive scientist, and his genetically modified horses on a Mars transport, 4 football fields in length with all the amenities of a cruise ship, plus a labyrinth, madness is just to be expected.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Especially on that long trip there to keep your sanity, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's a fun series.
Do you imagine more books in that series, or is the three? Is it
just
the three?
Three. I mean, I've toyed around with the idea, but I haven't really come up with a good one to go with it yet. So maybe not. Never know.
And then you've got your other series. So so I think this is your thriller series, right?
Yeah, mysteries and thrillers in that one.
And are all these all the same character? Or are they connected in any way, or are they just three individuals?
They are connected in that, characters from the first book are in the second book, characters from the second are in the third, and they but each one is its own story. And I don't think you would be lost if you picked it up out of the middle on that particular series, where most of my other ones, I would advise reading them from the beginning. I mean, you're always going to have a better experience, I think, if you start at the beginning of any series. But yeah, it's not one you would be completely lost if you picked one out of the middle. So
yeah, that's what everyone always asks me about, my series, my two series, and the Jarvis Man series, I figure, oh, I've had plenty of people start in the middle. You might get some spoilers if you start in the middle that may,
Yeah.
some of the earlier, you might learn something there that may happen in an earlier book. But they're written to be read as standalones, though there is some continuation. The Divine Devil series was definitely one of those that I said you got to start at the beginning and read it that way, or you'll probably be somewhat lost and stuff. So you hope they're going to read all the books, right? That's what we want them to do. They always sit there and say, you write these series and then you get me hooked and you want me to keep reading them. Like, well, yeah,
that is the idea. Yes.
That's what we hope that we do. I mean, if we lose them after the first book, then darn, right? So
yeah. I do have one series that's interesting. My faith fiction contemporary series. I often lose people after the second book because there's a big twist in there that some people don't like. I've been called a psycho in a review for that book.
Oh, really? Wow.
And but if they like that one, then they will go on and read the rest. But it's just interesting how the ratings dip on that book just because of those disgruntled, that just didn't like where that went. But yeah.
Well, and I had that in one of the Jarvis books too. Yeah.
Right.
It's technically the second book. It's the first novel in the series, and people were unhappy because of what happened to an animal in the book. And a lot of people were like, no, I don't do it. And I'm like, but if you kill off a human, it was okay. But
right.
Don't do an animal. And I learned my lesson there. I'm like, okay, well, no animals ever die anymore in any books of mine. So even though there was sort of a happy ending afterwards, it was still, but humans, it's okay. You can lop off as many heads as you want, but don't ever hurt an animal, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, people. But my suspense series has won quite a few awards. I really wasn't entering contests for the first one. This was my third book I ever wrote, so I really didn't even know contests that exist. But Diamond Diva won SEPA Award, Cal Award, and American Fiction Award for that one. And then Red Rabbit on the Run got the trifecta for Colorado with the Colorado Book Awards, the Cal Awards, and the SEPA Awards. This was won the mystery category in all three of those. And then this was the year I got the finalists for the Killer Nashville and
Silver Falchion.
Also American Fiction Award finalists for that one. So that one did really well in the awards. So
yeah, and I know you got you were one of the top books of the year this year as well, but I don't think you made it as a finalist, if I remember right.
Yeah, I got in the top pick and did not get the finalist designation this year.
Yeah, and mine did not either this year. So it was nice to be considered a top pick, but
and every contest is kind of a crapshoot of, has to be the perfect storm of competition and judges and all of that, and so.
Well, and they get expensive too, because most of them charge. There's a cost involved for pretty much all of these awards that you enter. I mean, I won a reader's favorite award for best psychological thriller one year, and I was like an honorable mention for the Divine Devils for them as well. But it's a matter of which ones do you enter, because there are so many of them. I know,
and I to me, like 75 is kind of my top to enter. And I looked up one the other day that was 125, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going there. Nope.
Well, yeah, and I think what reader's favorite is $100 and some. It gets a little cheaper if you enter it into different categories as well. But yeah, some of them get really expensive, and it's kind of like the professional reviews as well. The Kirkus,
right.
Kirkus charges like $500 or whatever.
Yeah,
crazy amount of money.
I don't really trust Kirkus reviews, I have to say.
I've never used them, not once.
Anything you have to pay $500 for, are they going to be true on their review? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's a little bit little bit of a challenge there. And
Yeah.
so and here's your this one you just when you were talking about how pretty this award was. So
Yes.
your Complications
Yeah.
Colorado Authors League award that you won just recently won,
Right.
right? You just had the awards just now.
Just Sunday. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had the awards ceremony. So yes. So yeah, that was fun. It was also a finalist in romance. Um, and I had a children's book that was a finalist also in that one. So
So what challenges do you run into with children's books? We were talking a little bit beforehand about you, obviously, and it sounds like do you do all the illustrations yourself
I
for them?
don't do all of them. I mean, I have a very narrow niche for what I do art wise, and it's mostly pet portraits. That's my thing. I do pets. And so I don't really enjoy like foliage. Ugh, I hate doing foliage. I did do the covers of my contemporary series, but it was just, it wasn't a lot of foliage, so I could do it. Um, but like this one, this is my treasure book, and I've done all of the paintings in this book. And they're all the cats that we had through our life, or some of them were my kids' cats, and it's just a simple little story, like cats are fat
Yes,
or thin,
just like humans.
yeah, or small. So it just goes on like that. They're
Right.
very fluffy, as round as a ball. But I've done all of these portraits for this book, and this was a finalist in the Cal Awards for the whole story
Right.
all together. But yeah, so I've done this one. I did my Tale of Two Kitties. My son actually, my younger son Tracy, did the drawings for the Stubborn Princess, and I just did the watercolor. I'm working on a new book called Cat and Rabbit, and I'll just show you the last illustration that I did for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a real fun one. I've got a few more to go on that. But then I just had a bunch of, my Sing a Story books are songs that I made up for my kids when they were little, when they were babies. And so they're for birth to 3 years old. And just in the last 3 years, I thought, well, those little songs would make great storybooks. And so I hired an illustrator for this one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got fun illustrations, and because it's got people in there, which no, I don't do people. And it also has the music in the back, so you can sing it or you can read it. For those who don't read music, they can even go to my website and hear me sing it. So yeah, those are fun. And this is, I grew up in Nebraska, so this is out in the field. That's the seasons of farming.
Yeah.
And Little Brown Horsey is obvious. That's kind of a children's fantasy book where the kids are all taking care of the horse. They just keep adding children as the story goes on, and pretty soon they're putting the horse to bed and feeding it and all that. So that's kind of fun.
So how does the illustrations work? Do you tell them on this page I want like this, and then they draw it for you, or do you let them kind of run with their own ideas?
These books were done by Gaspar Sabater. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name, but he's like in Argentina, I think. And he so easy to work with. I would just kind of describe, put in where I want an illustration and kind of describe what was going on. This one out in the field, that was breaking new ground for him. I had to send him a lot of pictures on farming implements.
Finally, they got a farm in Argentina, don't they? I mean,
evidently he was not big on farming, so he had like the Hiller upside down. I had to point that out, but then finally he said, "How do you know so much about farming?" I was like, "Well, I grew up on a farm, and this is basically my daddy's tractor on the front." So, so yeah, that was fun.
Well, I mean, Nebraska. I grew up in Iowa, so and I lived there until '81. But pretty much Even though I lived in Des Moines, I wasn't a farmer though. I lived in the city. You know, everyone says,
Right.
"Well, you grew up in Iowa. You must have grew up on a farm." Well,
Right.
there are cities, but
Exactly.
yes,
Right.
pretty much Nebraska, especially other than like Lincoln and Omaha,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
it's pretty much it's pretty much farmland. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that was interesting. But he does a really good job, and he's just so easy to work with.
so are you a pantser or a plotter? Do you, are you
I'm definitely a pantser. Every time I've tried to plot,
mhm.
I I usually get to the plot point and I'm like, no, that wouldn't happen. That's not where we're going, you know? And
Yeah,
so I finally have kind of just given up on that because I can sit and think about a story all day and don't really get very far in my head. It all happens with my fingers on the keyboard.
right.
So unless I start writing, I just don't get the inspiration that some people can just, put their whole story together in their head before they start. And that's just not me. It's just not the way my brain works. The illumination happens as I'm going. And yeah, sometimes I'll get a great idea and then I have to kind of backtrack and work that in. But, that's okay. I think that works fine too. So, uh, I'm sure the plotters think the pantsers are um, not doing it right, but but I think just you do what works for you, and anybody who says they have the rules and the right way to write, I just want to ignore them completely because everybody makes their own way. As long as you've got your grammar and you know how to do pacing and characters and everything, you can break some of the rules along the way.
Yeah, I was on a panel at Killer Nashville one year, and we were talking about pantser and plotter. And I was sitting next to a gentleman who was a plotter, and I'm a pantser as well. And I told him, I says, probably when you're plotting, probably makes it easier for you the way I do it in pantser. And he goes, not necessarily. He
Right?
says, I may sit there and plot it all out, but that doesn't necessarily mean I always stick 100% to
Yeah.
what I do. I may have that idea, but and for me, the characters help write the story a lot of times, and
Right.
and I start with a general idea of what it's going to do. Sometimes just the title of the book, as you mentioned in yours, the title sometimes there's already the titling, like the Front Range Butcher. I knew that was going to be the title of my serial killer book. That was
Mhm.
I had. I didn't even have a story yet. I just knew Front Range Butcher. I kind of knew what he did to his victims, and then
Yeah.
I just let the story and the characters hopefully help me
Right.
write it from there. So
Right. And I think it's really fun when all of a sudden you get this almost revelation of who this character is that you didn't know when you started. I've had
right.
a number of characters that were just put in for small roles or they were supposed to be just there for comedic effect, and then all of a sudden they're just taken over and they have become a major character. And yeah, it's really fun, I think, when that happens. And I
Yeah.
think you have to kind of sit with your characters for a while to know who they are, just like people in real life, you have to live with them a little bit.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but sometimes I feel like I'm a director, and there's that minor character that's in the background, and they're tapping me on the shoulder, saying, "I want a bigger part in
Right?
the story." That's what you're talking about, where that
Yeah.
character kind of evolves or changes, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
take over sometimes. So,
Mhm.
so do you write every day? Are you one of
Uh,
those strict people that says, "I got to write every day"?
I would love to. It doesn't happen every day just because of all of the other things I have going on at the moment.
Right.
But I'm hoping by that next year, my plate's going to clear off a little bit, and I'll be able to get back to that a little bit more. I try to. Um, it's hard. I do enjoy writing more than I enjoy art. I have to say, the process of art to me is 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 the whole thing isn't a joy. It's like I really don't like the initial sketching process. And then, you make a mistake and you're like, oh, why did I use that color? And what is going to happen with this? And this may be the first thing I throw away. And then all of a sudden, oh, there it is. It's done. I love it. Whereas writing, I really love the whole process, and perhaps it's just because it's so easy now to fix your mistakes. You didn't like that sentence, boom, 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 it's
Yeah.
gone. You don't have to try and figure out how to work it in, this bad color I've chosen. So maybe that's the whole thing, but I find the process of writing more enjoyable than the process of art. Art is to me is like gardening. I don't enjoy gardening, but I do love the produce. So that for me is art. I don't necessarily love the whole process of it, but I love the finished product. So um, for me to put aside writing to do art, that's a tough one. But I've tried to do that so I can get these children's books done that are in my head, and set myself a schedule, which I've kind of blown this year, I'll have to admit. But I at least started out with a schedule of I'm going to do a new painting every 2 weeks. I'm going to do a new illustration every 2 weeks. And so I have to force myself to stop writing a little bit and do an illustration. And it's probably a better balanced life that way, but it's not my gut of what I want to do necessarily. So
Well, that's one of the things, and we talked earlier before too, that you're basically an independent author. You do pretty much everything indie based, so you can work on your own schedule. You don't have deadlines. You may put deadlines on yourself,
right.
And you want to get them out. And sometimes your fans put deadlines on you. I get people all the time, I wish you could write faster. And I says,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
it's not like I can plug it into my cable into my brain and dump it all out onto the computer. There's still a process involved.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And this last book is taken me a while to get out. I just had the next one after this one is Time Agents Deceptions. It's all written. It's edited. It's ready to go. But I'm waiting on a book cover. And we just had so many delays once I figured out, I started writing it last fall, and it's set in Cripple Creek in like 1909, just a little bit past the big gold boom. So we went to Cripple Creek. We toured several museums. We did the Molly Kathleen gold mine tour, all of that stuff. But at the beginning, you don't really even know what questions you're going to need to ask. So it's like, okay, then I hit the winter and I had more questions, and I'm not a big winter person. I'm not going to go tromping around Cripple Creek in the winter. I'm just not. So I was waiting for spring to get back there. And I knew that I wanted to go to several more museums there and find out some more stuff. And then when I was ready to go, I looked up the museum and they were closed until May. And so I just had to wait and wait and wait. And then when I finally got there, and then the couple that I had found for my cover, a very busy couple, and I had to try and work them in, and I had a date for them. And then my photographer was sick, and it's like, oh, okay, reschedule that. It's like, well, it will come out eventually. That's all I can say. I have to be patient, but it will be out hopefully in the fall, if not sooner. So.
Well, Cripple Creek obviously is much different than it was then, because it's mostly a gambling town these days.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, you'd think there'd
A
be
lot of the old buildings are still there, and
right.
they're good, but the way they're set up, it's
Right.
all gambling these days.
All gambling, pretty much. And you'd think there'd even be fun shops like Manitou or something, but there's really not. It's weird. But anyway, they do have lots of great museums there. They've got at least 3-4 museums that have a lot of good information. And that Molly Kathleen gold mine tour is phenomenal. The guy who does that, so good at it. He's just so natural. You would think it was the first time he did it. And, he does it all the time. It's just so good at doing the tours. So anyway, that was fun. And you can't talk about Cripple Creek in that time without talking about the prostitution there, because it was huge. And so that was one of the places I needed to get back to, was the old Homestead Museum, which was their very, very fancy brothel that was like $250 a night in 1909. So and she had, had to have references. Nobody got in there without references and proof of money, kind of thing. It was very interesting. So I had to get back to tour that one, especially. But yeah, at the height of the gold boom, there was 300 prostitutes in Cripple Creek. So it was interesting.
So it's very similar. I was talking about Deadwood earlier, and this was in the 1870s. Deadwood was the same thing, mining town, a lot of prostitution. Deadwood was a lawless town too. They didn't have a sheriff until like 10 or 15 years later. Was Cripple Creek a lawless town as well, or did they have?
They really tried from kind of the beginning to bring it to respectability. Like that was important to them. It was a community. They had schools and churches and lots of community type organizations and lodges and stuff. So they really tried to, and they had an opera house and
church next to the brothel.
They actually pushed all of the prostitution to Myers Avenue. Yeah. And that's where the saloons and the dance halls and all the prostitution was. So yeah, it's really interesting, and just the complex thinking where, okay, we don't really approve of this, but we'll push it over there and we'll charge them a fee for doing it, kind of thing.
Yeah, make some revenue off of it.
Gave the girls, a certain morning to do their shopping so they could shop by themselves without being harassed by the good people of town. And it was interesting research.
Yeah, that's that time was pretty crazy. And of course they have the train still there, I think, in
they have an excursion train that goes to Victor. You can take a ride on if you want.
But I'm sure that the train they had, I don't know, it's the same type of train. I can't remember if that was a coal or a steam engine.
Yeah, they had trains. I think it was, if I'm remembering right, a train came into Cripple Creek like every 11 minutes or something crazy like that. It was nuts.
Right.
How much, and you can imagine the pollution from that many trains. That one, I read a firsthand account by someone who was young at that time, and she's like, the smell was just awful there, between the trains and the ore leaching process and the lack of good sewage and animals and everything, that it was just, you couldn't imagine the smell for a mountain, place. You'd think it'd be pristine and beautiful and smell gorgeous like nature, but it did not. They really.
Well, yeah, I was wondering, did they have modern plumbing? Did they have electricity in those early 1900s there?
No, obviously not at the very beginning. They tried to get it in as fast as they could. I think if I remember right, the electricity actually got there before the sewers, but so yeah, a lot of outhouses and plus you had all these transient miners who just set up tents around, and so it was just,
they would go wherever the rumor was that there's gold in their hills, and then they'd get there and it would be mined out and they'd go on to something else.
Right. Yeah. So it was a crazy life, and a few people of course got madly rich, but most people did not really.
That's right. Yeah, well, and there's always power brokers in those towns too that were running things, and they, like with anything, just like with any corporation, the people on top make a lot of money, and the laborers struggle, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that was very fun, and that'll, like I said, hopefully that'll be out end of August at least. I hope by so.
And so you obviously pay people to do your editing and your book covers and
actually I'm a pretty good editor myself. I can see things a lot of people don't see, but then of course I miss stuff too. So I have a lot of beta readers to try and help me catch that. My son Tristan does all of my covers. This couple we happened to find on Shutterstock, which was amazing to find like the perfect couple in the perfect outfit. That never happens. So it's like, okay, we just bought this couple's picture for this one.
How
My
long did it take him to find it, though? Did
um,
you do like search couple and it came
yeah,
up in the
I don't remember it. I was so shocked to say, oh my gosh, they're perfect.
because
Uh,
they probably have what a few million pictures on
oh
Shuttle.
yeah, and of course they're all just doing dorky poses. It's like what I don't know. These guys are great, but anyway. But the next one we did a photo shoot. I saw this perfect couple in church. I find a
Right.
lot of I watch people in church.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got a perfect couple for the next book. And we did a photo shoot in my basement. We've done several photo shoots in my basement in front of a green screen. And Tristan's so good at Photoshop to put the lightning and everything behind it. And it doesn't look, chopped. It doesn't look
Right.
pasted in. He goes in and does the hair and everything, that looks natural. So he was a graphic design major. So he's good at that. Tristan Bowersox, if you want your book cover.
Yes, well, yeah, because the software is pretty incredible. I mean, I have various software here, and I wish
Yeah,
I had the skill set to do it sometimes. And
yeah.
it's
Well, and my husband does all my layout. He's my computer techie guy, so he does all the insides for me, and he has a program that he's created just for doing the layouts and stuff. So he
it's a
does.
little tougher with the children's books, right? Because
Right. Now, yeah, Tristan does my layout for the children's books, and he's done all this fun. Whoops, I'm in a mirror here. Done all the fun work with fonts and stuff. So, yeah.
so tell us a little bit about Colorado Authors League. That's an organization, and there's actually a few different author group. You're talking about author
Right.
groups out here, but there's
Yeah.
a
Right.
lot of various ones. We have the Rocky Mountain mystery
Yeah.
writers and
Right.
fiction and
Yeah. There's right.
Sisters of Crime, and there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ones.
The Northern Colorado Writers, which has just recently changed to Writing Heights, is one. And then, yeah, like you said, the Rocky Mountain Fiction. There's Pikes Peak Writers. I don't know if there's one down south or not. But then what makes Colorado Authors League different is that you can't aren't accepted for a membership until you are published, whereas most of the other groups are about the writing process and honing your craft and all of that. Colorado Authors League figures you've already done that, you're published, so we don't spend a lot of time talking about the writing craft or getting ready for publishing because you've already done that. Occasionally, we'll have an older member who's now out of print and they want to know how to start over, and how to get their files and
Right.
redo it. And we'll help them with that if that's an issue. But generally, we don't deal with those topics. So instead, we focus more on promotion and marketing. I've been the president for 3 years. And I also do the social media posts. So I post a book a day on social media. And I do Facebook and Mastodon and Instagram. And we have get togethers. We have the Cal Awards, which is kind of a big deal from November to July, basically. So that's we have a lot of members who join just because they want to have another contest to enter. And sometimes they drop out after that. But
they don't get nominated, right? Oh, heck with that.
yeah, we do a lot of things. But like we have a members resources page that is a benefit for membership that has a list of trusted contests and just resources for getting published or helps with marketing and stuff like that. So we try to really help authors with the next step after publishing. It's like how to sell your book, how to market it well, how to make your Amazon page look great, how to put all those little details in. So we help with that. We have a few get-togethers. We're going to try a new thing in September. We're going to do the wine and read, where we are going to get together and just get through as many readings as we have in the time and hopefully invite people in so it's not just us with a glass of wine. So fun times. We always have a holiday party. We try to do several coffees or barbecues or something through the year in various locations around Colorado. But we're all really spread out now. I have a woman in Denver who has it's a book group. I think maybe it's more than a book group, but they are a book group. Windsor Garden group, and they every year want our list of winners, and they will contact them to see if they want to come talk to the group. And
Nice.
this time she was like, oh, so many of these are so far away. And that's just part of the growth that has happened with Cal, as we now
Right.
have 360 members, and they are all over. And so, she's having a harder time finding people just in Denver area or, Colorado Springs. I don't mind driving that far, but some people don't like to drive. So
Get
it's
my number.
interesting how we've really spread out a lot. So, yeah.
So it was like, is it $60 a year? I think it is the
Yes.
membership. Is that
Yeah.
what it is?
Yeah, and you get a break if you do 3 years at a time. I think it's a 10% discount or something like that.
Oh, you can do three at a time too. Because
Yeah.
I was in it for a year. I think I was in it for a year. Maybe it was more than
Yeah.
1 year, 2 years and stuff. And I dropped out. I got into a couple other groups, and I've just
Right.
never really looked. But
You
I
only
was
do so
telling
much,
you,
you know?
I want to get back. Yeah, I want to get back in. I was going to get signed up for it now. I wasn't sure. So is it a calendar year thing, or how does it?
It's
Like if I were to join now in the middle of the year, is that going to cover?
Yeah, it used to be everybody joined in June or something, but
Yeah.
now that we have a whole different system, a whole different website that keeps track of everybody's personal year for them. So you don't
Okay.
have to, it keeps track. It sends out the reminders and all of that. So that makes it a lot easier. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, any authors out there? Yeah, you definitely ought to look into, especially if you and you have to be a Colorado author to be
Right.
part.
Or have a Colorado connection. You can stay in. It's like once a Cal member, you can always remain a Cal member no matter where you go.
Right.
We've even had people who applied and they're like, well, I was in Colorado, from birth to 2 years old or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's good enough. You've just got to have a Colorado connection to be considered for membership. And we do have, you have to have published within the last 3 years. That just kind of shows that you are still a writer. You're not just relying on one book that you wrote 20 years ago. And which we do have a lot of members who only write one book. But, as long as they get in at the right time, a lot of people who write a memoir, that's really the only book they're interested in writing. But yeah, well, if that was your book, then that's okay.
That's good. So obviously, I asked this question of everybody. Name of my podcast, Bringing Life to Characters. So, what is it you do to bring life to your characters? What your characters obviously may speak to you like they speak to me sometimes, but
Right.
What do you look for in making those characters realistic? And of course, you've covered a lot of different genres, so
Right.
some of those characters may be different when it comes to the various genres.
Right. Yeah, and character is really important to me. If I read a book that the characters are just kind of shallow, I just don't care about it. It's just to me, it's a throwaway. It's going to be gone. It's going to be lost. But I think that, by reading a lot of good books with good characters, you just kind of, I really feel like good writing is more caught than taught. And if you read a lot of good books, it perhaps does you more good than studying how to write.
Right.
I think I could tell people all day, what makes a good character, but you have to kind of experience good characters as you've read them. They have to have motivation. And of course, even your bad guys, they have to have a reason for being who they are and what they do. And it has to make sense, it can't just be something stupid. It has to make sense. And so
Well, and they have good qualities sometimes too. I mean, nobody is ever
Exactly.
100% good, and nobody's ever 100% bad.
That's right.
We all bleed over.
Unless you've got a real psycho,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
it was.
character, then it's. But yeah, your good guys are. I mean, I've got in my new one, one of my lead men. I told these couple that came to get their picture taken, while we were kind of waiting to get set up. I said, "Let me tell you about your character. You're scoundrels. Both of you are kind of scoundrels, but this is a redemption story." And so it's what they have learned. She was, rejected by her father, left at a young age, and she, tried to find validation with every guy that came along. And so she just learned all of these tricks, to manipulate men. And the guy was just kind of a, prankster type. Um, he just wants a good time. And, so when he meets her, everything kind of shifts for him in a way that he's never experienced before. And so it's, both of them have this baggage from their past that they're bringing into it, but somehow together they learn a different way. And I think that that's probably a big theme in a lot of my books, probably most of them, is that second chance, redemption. What you've done isn't who you are. You can move beyond a mistake, that kind of thing. You can make a new life. So I think that to ever make that effective, you have to have depth. I think that I probably did this the most in Blue-Eyed Devil, because the main character in this is actually a trafficker of women. And even he gets a redemption story. So, he's, and I give him reasons for what happened that made him, distrust all women and, think they were the manipulators and all of that. So he has a background that builds through the series. He's actually introduced two books he's actually introduced in this, where we get to see some of his horrific life. And then he's caught. He's, then the FBI uses him to find some of the other traffickers, and he's in prison when this book starts, but they're going to use him again. They want his knowledge, so he gets out to be able to be used by the FBI. And but when given the opportunity, he makes his escape. So that's part of that plot. And just, the woman that makes him rethink his life. So women have a way of doing that.
They do. They do. And we usually marry them, right? Yeah. At least in my case.
So yes, there's always some element of a new life and a new way to go in most of them.
So you mentioned some of the women in there, kind of, and your characters are kind of a little bit of you were saying a little bit. Are there any other characters you've written that are based on real people you've known, or maybe
I think
people change the names to protect the innocent and all that?
Probably not exactly. I think you take little pieces from people that you know all over the place. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hilarious that I'm very much, this character in here that I described to you as hyper-organizational, germophobic, scaredy cat, fussy pants. That's probably the scaredy cat part of it is definitely me, and the hyper-organizational. I'm not germophobic, but I can be a fussy pants. So I just there's a scene in here where she's just telling somebody about how she almost did the water slide. She almost did it. And he's like, well, next time you'll do it. And she's like, no, they won't let me do it again because I went back down the ladder. And so caused quite a scene going back down the ladder. And that's totally me. That's totally me, because don't do heights. I'm not an amusement park person at all. So that's kind of interesting. I put all of my and in here she keeps updating her day timer as she does things, and I tend to do that too. I just did something that wasn't on my list, so I write it down so I can check it off. So
Well, as they say, you write what you know, right? So that's what we do. Yeah. But do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
I would really just say read a lot and read good books. Unfortunately, I think there's so much garbage out there now that sometimes I don't even think people know what a good story is, because especially now with AI garbage, it's going to flood our market. So I guess I don't know how you tell somebody to find a good book if they don't even know what a good book is, but I guess look at some of the more well-known authors to start with, just so you can get an understanding of what good material is, and good pacing. Sometimes, it all has to come together, every element. You can't have a book with great characters where the pacing is terrible. You can't have, the pacing right, but the plot has holes in it. It all has to come together, every element. So I guess, yeah, just, read a bunch of really good books, and don't be afraid to write it and let somebody read it before you publish it, because, those bad reviews never go away, unless you're going to do a whole new edition at some point. You want to start with something good and just make sure it's good before you put it out there. Make sure the grammar is right. Make sure the typos are out of your books. And I think that's really important, to have the foundation so they can't pick it apart on the basics. You've got to make sure you got your basics down for sure. And then just, yeah, get a lot of people to read it and give you feedback. And I think that's mainly all I would say about that. Did I lose you, Randy? Hello? Well, since Randy has disappeared, I don't know what happened. I don't even know if I'm still going here. But I'll tell you a little bit more about my books. I have a series that's a Rocky Mountain series that's set in Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs and along the Front Range. That's a contemporary faith fiction series. Then I have I think I told you a little bit about my first book about horses. That one is about an artist who does horse sculptures, and she meets this veterinarian. She comes home from Chicago and back home, where she does not want to be because she's been in a scandal. And hello, Randy, you're back.
Yeah, my computer completely froze up.
Oh no!
I thought maybe it was the internet or you, but my computer was just like. So I had to totally boot it down. So you kept people entertained while I was gone.
Yeah, I just kept talking. So.
Well, I wasn't. I'm assuming you knew I was gone, but I wasn't positive.
Yeah, I was talking about my horses. Horses. It's the name of it is Horses, Adrenaline, and Love, and it's set in the small town, Nebraska. The gal has come back home after just not having enough money to live in Chicago, and she's a sculptor, and she has a past in that small town that she wants to forget. So, and of course, everybody knows her, and it was quite a scandal. And so she has to start over, and this wonderful, hunky, good-looking veterinarian helps her get through and to leave it behind. So
Okay, so let's see. I was asking you about offer or advice for authors. So, what about marketing tips? Sounds like if you want some really good marketing tips, you should join Cal.
yes, absolutely. I wish I were an expert on marketing. I think we all just struggle with trying to find the magic formula for it. Recently I tried some Facebook ads, which actually I saw a huge difference in the pages read, like 2.5 times jumped with those ads.
On the
But
Kindle Unlimited?
yes,
Yes.
yes. But then I stopped them. I wasn't really sure, even though I was having more pages read, the ads were still costing me a pretty good
Right.
chunk, so I really wasn't sure I was breaking even though it was, and I felt like, well, there's some value to that in the short term. Your people are finding you. And I know that it is continued. I don't have the pages read this month that I did the month I was doing that, but they're still up.
Right.
So I think that it helped. And I'll try it again when I have this new book coming out, and I'll try a few different techniques. But there's, of course, a lot of people who have supposedly the way to do it. And what I would suggest, though, is if you do Facebook ads, opt out of their AI creative optimization, because they wanted to, like, I was advertising Cinnamon Girl, and some of their suggestions were healthy snacks.
Yeah. Because the word cinnamon, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just like, are you kidding me? And I actually had one of my ads come through my own feed, and I could see it wasn't the way I set it up. And I that's when I turned them off, and I said, okay, I got to figure out why this isn't set up the way I wanted it. And when I talked to one of their meta experts, they said, oh, you didn't opt out of the AI stuff. Well, I just made sure I didn't opt in at some point, but I didn't realize I had to like go in deeper somehow and opt out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That drives me nuts. I get that all. I work in the IT. I've worked in the IT world most of my life, and that's one of those things. It's like you shouldn't have to opt out of stuff like that.
Right.
It should be opt in.
Exactly. I kind of have Amazon ads, some running kind of all the time, which I guess is doing something. It's hard to tell, That's the thing, is it's so hard to tell what's doing what. It would be great if you had some way to kind of talk to the people you never ever see or hear from, like those people who just found you not because of your newsletter, not because they know you, but somehow they just found you, right? And you want to be able to ask them questions of how did you find me and all of that, and be able to tell them, hey, I have a new book you might enjoy. But it's really hard. It's like there's a real disconnect between the author and the audience, and it's difficult. But marketing, yeah, I have on our website. I did a Zoom on simple marketing things that you can do today, and those are things like cleaning up your Amazon page, making sure your bio on Amazon says the most important stuff at the beginning before it goes to the ... see more. You want to make them click that button. So many people start off with, oh, I live in whatever, I have 3 dogs and 10 cats, and it's nothing about writing, like lead with, I think mine starts out with, Jodi is an award-winning author with how many different books, and so that's what you want to lead with, because you only have a tiny window that they see at the beginning. So There's tips like that. Make sure you've got all your awards listed on your Amazon page and at the top of your synopsis and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, there are some little tips. Take advantage of every time someone will give you a profile page, like BookBub gives you the free profile page, and Amazon, and just anywhere that will give you that spotlight. It's a chance to be found.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good advice. So, and yep, if you're an aspiring author, join Cal, and you can get more tips like that on the when you become a member.
Yeah,
Maybe pick a few people's brains as well in the process, right?
exactly. Yeah, because we do have a Facebook group too. That's a private group, and so we can discuss whatever we want in there.
Yeah. Nice. So, do you have any events coming up that you're doing?
My husband and I are going to do the Comic-Con that's at the Broadmoor
No.
in Colorado Springs in August.
Yeah, I did it one year. It
Yes.
was at the old mall that was closed one year.
Okay.
My books don't really fit the Comic-Con stuff, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It was fun. It was
Right.
3 really long days. Like
Yeah.
one day was like 12 hours, and I was just exhausted.
Oh, I know.
But it was cool seeing all the people in the costumes and stuff.
Right.
That was before they moved to the Broadmoor because it wasn't really a great spot. I'm sure the
Yeah.
Broadmoor probably brings more people.
Yeah, I hope so. We did one con that was just terrible here, but it was just sort of an add-on. The guy just kind of threw it together in a month or two, and it was not worth doing. But so we're hopeful for this one. Kevin did Galacticon last year, and he did pretty good with that. But I didn't go because I was worn out. And
Well,
but
sci-fi, obviously at a Comic-Con, sci-fi
yeah,
books going to do
yeah,
well. And I'm
yeah.
blanking on his name. He's part of Cal. Long hair. He does sci-fi.
Todd. Oh,
Todd, yes.
Todd. He's fantasy. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
He's
He
very
goes all
popular at the
over.
Comic-Cons.
He went to San Diego Comic-Con this last weekend.
Oh,
So yeah, he goes everywhere. But I got a little craft show that I was super surprised last year did really well, and so I'm going to do that again. And then we have the Denver gift show for the co-op booth. That's another benefit of Cal is the co-op booth that we do in the fall in November. So
are you still doing the one up here in town too?
we're not doing it this year in
Too
Colorado
expensive. Those booths are crazy expensive.
last year the sales were really down here in the springs, so I opted to take that out because it was always tough to do a 1 week turnaround, do one show and then the next weekend do another one. I was wiped, so I was just as glad not to do that one. And now they've moved the Denver show to the Western Stock Show building. So
Oh, really?
it's not at the convention center where it's been the last couple of years. And I'm kind of glad because the convention center parking is awful.
Tough. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why they put that in and didn't think about parking, but they didn't seem to.
Well, you got light rail down there, so you can park in various spots and take light rail. But
Exactly. But like when you've got lots of books or you're setting up or
that
anything,
doesn't
it's
work.
impossible. You can't. So
It makes it tough.
So yeah, so that'll be different, a new location and kind of a new weekend. It's the third weekend in November when it's always been either the first or the second. So it'll be a little different, but so that's something to look forward to. Yeah.
And then you don't do like a lot of different craft fairs or anything like that.
Like I said, this one surprised me that it was good, so I'm going to do it again and see. We did one in Monument, but it was really expensive, and it wasn't that great on the 4th of July. We don't have as many craft fairs here as you have in Denver. There's just not.
In the fall, I'm busy every weekend.
Yeah, there's just not here. I did a really good. Actually, we had the very best craft fair I did was at my church this last year, and they didn't even charge us. It was amazing.
Well, the church, and I do several churches, and generally they don't charge much.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're 2 days. I mean, it's like $50, which is nothing.
Right.
And they got a built-in crowd, and sometimes they hold it during, like on the one here I do over here in Broomfield.
Yeah.
They do it on Saturday and Sunday, and they have mass, and so you get these really dead times, and then all of a sudden, boom, mass lets out, and you're like,
oh, yeah,
a big swarm of people coming in. So
yeah. Well, in our booth, it costs $99 to be a part of it, which seemed really expensive until recently. Like that Monument Craft Fair was 175. And I
Yeah.
split it with somebody else, so it was
Yeah.
okay, close to okay. But yeah, that's ridiculous, man, for a 1 day craft fair.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for one day.
Yeah. So anyway, I was thinking, wow, our price isn't so bad after all, and to go up because that's what
Well,
I
because
really.
they charge a lot. The
Yes.
Christmas show is what,
Oh my
almost like
God.
$1,000 for the
Every booth
space.
is $1,000, and we have 3 booths. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's got. And I talked them down once the Denver gift show took over. It's no longer the Colorado Country Christmas gift show.
Right.
A different company came in, and of course, immediately the prices went up, and they charged for every chair you had to use and every table, and it was crazy. They charge you they want you to have carpeting, but they charge you for it. And so, yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, and it's just cheap, thin carpeting.
Right.
Um, so I said the last 2 years I've gotten a deal out of them just by saying we just can't do it. Do you want to lose us? Because we've been
Right.
a part of your gift show for years now. I mean, it went way. I started managing it in 2018, and it had been going on at least 3 years before that. So I was like, do you want to lose us? Because we just can't do this. And
Right.
they have given me a deal. So who knows how long that will last. But
Is
so
that held at the Broadmoor as well? Or
no,
is
this is
that
the
held?
one that's at the Western Stock Show.
Oh, no, but I mean, there's one in Colorado Springs too,
It
right?
was. It is still going. We're just not going to be a part of it. That is still the
So
Colorado.
you're going to come up to the Denver one.
Yeah, the Colorado Country Christmas is still going on here. And I don't know if they have a couple more locations, but they just, I don't know, sold out a lot of their locations to this new company.
Yeah. Well, we've got about an hour and 20 minutes. So where can people find you? I got your website here to throw up, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's the good place to start because that'll take you to Amazon. It'll tell you which books are on Audible. I even have it connected to my Etsy shop where I have a lot of fun things as well. So yeah,
that
that's
you made yourself?
yeah, yeah. I've recreated my life many times. I started out as like I said, I was a theater major. I was going to be an
Yeah.
actress, but I've always been a seamstress because I was in 4-H, and so I used to make bridal gowns and stuff. And so now I just do fun things. I make mostly what I sell is I make women's vests out of men's ties, and so I sell those all over. I've sold those all over the world. Um, until the shipping got tricky, and then I said, no, I won't sell them out of the country anymore. But yeah, I sold them to Italy and France and Germany and just all over. I also have some fun scarves that I call monster scarves. They have a little monster hidden in the fur. But yeah, just fun stuff.
So, yep, everybody needs to go to her site, and you can look all the different types. I mean, there's a lot of different. You're going to probably find just about everything. If there's a genre that you only read, you probably have it at least pretty close. So, other than horror,
Right? No horror. I didn't.
no, they can go to Stephen King for that, right?
Right?
So,
Exactly.
okay, well, great. Well, thanks, Jodi. Appreciate you joining us today. I'm here looking at trying to find Microsoft and everything. They're changing. Hopefully, my computer doesn't crash again. But thanks for being on. I'll be probably sending my membership through. It sounds like you said, you'll have a little more time. You got a new president coming in, hopefully at the end of the year. So you'll have a little more time to
Yes.
to do
Yeah.
things other than running a big time business like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they pay you a lot to do that too, right?
Oh, yeah. Somebody said to me the other day they were expecting their Tesla along with their trophy they won. And I said, well, you'll get yours when I get mine.
Oh yeah, Tesla. You get one of those cyber trucks, right?
Oh, geez, yeah.
Those ugly looking things that people pay a whole lot of money for. So, okay. Well, thank you again. Appreciate you having me on. It's good seeing you again. I haven't seen you in person in quite a few years. But hopefully we'll run across paths again down the road, at least in one of the Cal events.
Yeah, awesome.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, a little technical glitch there. That's the first time that's happened where we've had a little freeze up the first time, but that one was on my end. My computer completely froze, so I had to power it down and back up again. The old turn it off and back on again to fix it issue. So, but thanks for anyone who's watching this. We didn't have too many people on live today, but you can watch the recording of this in the future. In 2 weeks, it'll be on August 6th. I'm going to have Leah M. Hall on, scheduled for, we're hoping. And then after that, we're going to have Bruce Robert Coffin on, who's an ex-cop, he's a great author I met at Killer Nashville, and he's going to be fun to talk to and kind of dig down and learn a little bit. I had a CIA agent a few weeks ago with Carmen, and now we get a police officer, a former cop on, and learn more about the real life of a cop and how it translates over into the fictional world. But thanks again, everyone. We will see you in a couple of weeks.